you, friends. After Harbans, I don't have much to add. First of all, I'm very grateful that you have given me this opportunity to come and meet you. When I come to the university these days, it's a very depressing experience because the kind of antagonism which exists between the administration on the one side and teachers and students on the other side is something the like of which has never existed in JNU. There have been, as Harban said, there have been geraus, there have been agitations, there have been campaigns and so on. There have been contradictions, but not antagonism of the kind that we find today. I'll just give you two examples. I think the History Center's gherao that Harban was talking about, I think went on to become a gherao of G. Parthasarathi, who was our first Vice-Chancellor. He was gheraoed all night. There was not any question of calling any police. There was not any question of any disciplinary action. I think that gherao was on the question of giving backwardness points for admission purposes. And ultimately the university accepted that backwardness points should be given to the students for social deprivation, economic and regional deprivation. But the point is that, that throughout the night, GP, who was not exactly a young man, was geraoed, but no complaints about it. And subsequently, sometimes GP would ring me and ask about students and so on. And the same students who had geraoed, he had enormous affection for them. The second incident, which I think is worth recalling here, is when Yoginder Alag was the Vice-Chancellor. I think the students did some agitation against Yoginder and decided to go on a hunger strike, indefinite hunger strike. So Yoginder, what he did is that he actually sat in front of the students. He said, I'm also going to go on a hunger strike. And so this just became, and obviously after a certain point, Yoginder is an elderly person, so the students themselves said, all right, let's talk and settle it. But that's the kind of spirit, not a spirit of antagonism, but of course there are differences between the administration and the students and teachers, but these differences, while they constitute contradictions, they don't constitute antagonisms. And that is basically the spirit in which JNU was. So, which is why I feel very depressed when I come here and look at the kind of antagonism that has developed to a point where you can't even hold a meeting out there. Now, these days, not a day passes without one hearing some story about how university authorities which have been appointed by the Sangh Parivar are trying to influence the process of selection of faculty, the process of admission of students, to ensure that the university community's composition changes in the direction of the supporters of Hindutva. Now, and this is done in violation of the rules, the norms, the procedures of the university. Now, I think this is very sad, and it really is an assault on the university, because not only does it lower the academic quality, but it also entails an import onto the campus of vigilantism and lumpenism and violence of the sort that we see outside. Now, this, of course, is a major threat to the university, and the idea of the university, therefore, is threatened from this particular source. But to my mind, an even greater threat to the idea of the university is actually the very conception of the university that is being sought to be promoted. If you say that a university must be a place where nationalism is promoted, if you say that a university must actually stand for the goal of development and so on, then you are attributing to the university very specific objectives. Now, of course, there is one argument which Shatarupa was giving, that this nationalism is in fact a fascistic nationalism. But even if laudable objectives were actually placed as the university's kind of purpose, that the university's job should be to promote laudable objectives, I would still be opposed to it, because the university's job is not to promote any objectives. The university's job, in my view, is in fact to engage in a pursuit of truth. Now, I know that the concept of truth is something which is very old-fashioned, and but of course, objectives of universities cannot be determined by fashion. And of course, truth also raises methodological problems, because if you say that truth consists in a conformity of an opinion with facts, then the question arises, what is a fact? that we know that a lot of things which are called facts, there is no fact independent of a theoretical perception of it. In other words, it's a positivist view to think of a fact as something which is an objective, independent thing that exists independent of a theoretical perception of it. But on the other hand, we, of course, all of us nonetheless, are not relativists that any opinion is correct or anything goes, but we do have an idea that certain things are right, certain things are wrong from a factual point of view. Therefore, whether it is the natural sciences, whether it is the social sciences, as long as we agree that real objects exist, and they're not just objects of thought, then it necessarily follows that there is a quest for truth, and the university is concerned with that. Objectives are secondary. The quest for truth in a university is primary. In fact, it is the truth that must define what the objectives that a society places before itself should be. Now, if it is the case that a university is actually mandated with the task of the pursuit of truth, then that makes the university immediately an extremely revolutionary institution. Why? Because obfuscation of the truth is something which suits the ruling classes. The obfuscation of the truth is not in the interest of the people. It's in fact in the interest of the ruling classes, in the interest of the property, in the interest of the privileged, in the interest of the powerful. They are the ones who would like to hide the truth and to ensure that there is no genuine quest for truth that is taking place anywhere. It follows, therefore, that if a university is doing its duty of actually dispassionately, boldly, without intimidation, questing for truth, then that university is playing a revolutionary role. I think one of the things about JNU is that JNU actually has not been inflicted with the corruption that actually prevails in society in general and in many educational institutions in particular. Many people, for instance, say that, look, what is this institution? It's only producing communists. In fact, last Sunday I was in Tejpur University and I was driving, as you know, it's a 4-hour drive from Guwahati. So I was driving with somebody and he said, sir, you're from JNU, but how come that this institution produces only communists? You know, there's a complete misunderstanding. JNU does not produce communists. JNU, in fact, is what it is because it has not been afflicted by the corruption that everywhere society is pushing youth into. In other words, it is a place where even now you can actually talk to students and teachers and students come together to discover what they think is the truth. I may have a different view, but that's not the point. But the point is that students have not been corrupted into not thinking. In other words, you know, there's a continuous effort in society to push youth and students into non-thought. When Mr. Venkaiah Naidu says in Parliament that, you know, what is this, why don't students actually study? That study basically means go and look at your textbooks and prepare for a career. In other words, the whole idea is to push students into non-thought. The idea of a university in a society like ours is actually to produce zombies. Or to produce zombies who have a certain amount of skill, but who do not actually look at society, who are not concerned with the truth. JNU has been free of that, and thank God for it. In fact, JNU is what it is precisely because it is a university that has not been corrupted by the quest for non-thought. And that is why the kind of people it produces, there is a kind of authentic kind of, you know, there's an authenticity about it. There's a kind of non-corruption about it, which people mistake for communism. And so it's not as if JNU produces communists. I'm sure between Shatarupa and Mohit there are lots of differences. But on the other hand, in other words, both of them may be part of a political spectrum, lots of differences. So it's not that JNU produces some category called communists, but what JNU produces, at least till now, and I hope it will continue to do so, though of course the effort is on to prevent it, is that it actually does not inculcate in the students the corruption that society or let's say the privileged classes in society demand that university should inculcate, so the students don't think. They are totally preoccupied with their own careers. They are totally myopic when looking at social contradictions as a whole. In other words, they are actually unconcerned about truth. Now, the point is that, this guy, obviously any quest for truth requires that there must be a multiplicity of views, because it is only with a contestation between multiplicity of views that you can arrive at something which is, let's say, a semblance of truth. It presupposes a multiplicity of views and opinions prevailing in the university, and if that multiplicity is somehow scuttled, if that multiplicity is prevented, then the university degenerates, and the university ceases to play the role that actually it is expected to play, and which is in the interest of the people, and which, of course, the privileged and the powerful do not want it to play. This is something which can also be damaging as far as the ruling persons themselves are concerned. A total absence of truth, a total absence of any kind of an opinion that seeks to base itself upon truth can be very damaging even to the powers that be. Sometimes this damage can be advantageous. Indira Gandhi would not have called the elections after the emergency if she was actually aware of the fact she's going to lose the elections. In fact, she was going to lose the elections, but of course by that time there had been such a coterie of sycophancy around her that everybody says, no, madam, you're going to win, and consequently she called the elections and lost. So the emergency ended. So sometimes the fact that the powers that be ignore the truth is something which is to the advantage of the people. But at other times it can be extraordinarily catastrophic. There is a view, I don't necessarily agree with it, but there's a view that one of the reasons that the Americans got into the Vietnam War, and as you know, the Vietnam War was catastrophic for everybody. One of the reasons they got into the Vietnam War because there was nobody in America who had adequate knowledge, idea about Southeast Asia, East and Southeast Asia. Why not? Because a lot of the people who had ideas about East and Southeast Asia were people who were sympathizers of the anti-colonial struggle, who were part of the progressive spectrum in America, and who had been hounded during the McCarthy period. Many of them had lost their jobs. Many of them had been thrown out of the universities. Many of them had actually gone to jail because they didn't want to testify against others. And consequently, there had been a decimation of scholars who had some knowledge about East and Southeast Asia. The most classic case, of course, here is a person called E.H. Norman, who wrote a classic work on Japan, great scholar in Japan, who committed suicide because of the McCarthy witch hunt. But the point is that it is clearly the case that a society which prevents the quest for truth is one in which even the powers that be can actually get into catastrophic situations because there's nobody to warn them otherwise. Even in India, for instance, so many of our colleagues are being attacked for being sympathetic to the cause of what they see as the cause of the Kashmiri people. Now, unless you have people who are willing to tell the government that, look, what you are doing is something which is fraught with great danger, in that case the government would actually escalate the kind of problems that exist, and therefore a catastrophic situation might develop. So it is very important that actually the quest for truth is not compromised by the demands of specific objectives like nationalism, development, respect for the military for which a tank has to be installed here, and all the rest of it. All those are secondary. What is fundamental is that the university must be tasked with the idea of a quest for truth. And as long as we do that, then we are playing a revolutionary role in society. You don't have to be a communist belonging to this or that political party, but fundamentally our job as teachers and students is to search for, is really the pursuit of truth. And that is what we must do if we are going to remain true to the spirit of JNU. Thanks.